Hopefully you had some success putting the midpoint function together. In this section, we're going to go over a solution. Remember that we just went over a kind of verbal description of what's going to go on with our solution in the last video. So if you skipped the last video, I encourage you to go back and watch the discussion about using two variables to keep track of iteration through the linked list. So that's exactly what we're going to do here to solve this question. So here's my midpoint function. I'm going to open it up, and then we're going to define our two variables, slow and fast. And they're both going to start out looking at the first element in our linked list. So I'll say let slow is list.getFirst. And just to be clear, if you did list.head here to get the first element, that's totally fine. No difference whatsoever. Absolutely fine. And then let fast equals list.getFirst. Now, when I spoke about exactly how we're going to approach this by saying, okay, are the next two elements defined? Well, that's really the case that we're going to use for our while loop to iterate through the list. So we're going to write a while loop, and so long as the fast node has a node in front of it defined and a node in front of that defined, then we're going to continue to iterate. So we will say while the fast node has one defined after it, and there is something defined after that. So we'll say fast.next.next. So this checks the next node, and this one checks the node after that. As long as those two situations are satisfied, then we want to continue advancing through our linked list. So we'll move slow forward by one by saying advance slow to slow.next. So slow.next right here would be the next element. So here's slow. If it's pointing at red, then the next element in the chain would be the current slow value .next, which would pass us on to the orange node. And then for fast, we're going to do something very similar. We'll say jump forward by 2. So we'll say fast.next.next, like so. Now, as soon as fast does not have a node in front of it or a node after that, the while loop will exit. And so we'll then know that slow must be pointing at the midpoint. And so we'll simply return slow after the while loop runs. And that's pretty much it. So kind of a deceptively straightforward problem. This is just another one out of all these problems we've been doing. I know I've said this so often, but you've either seen these problems before or you haven't. And so if you've seen this before and you understand the slow and the fast, this is like, 6-7 lines of code. This is pretty easy. This is pretty straightforward once you've seen the solution. But coming up with this in an interview setting is extremely challenging. And so this is why practicing ahead of time really pays off for interviews. All right, so let's save this file and see how our tests are doing. And yep, everything's passing. So hey, that's pretty much it. Not that bad, right? Like I said, we can use this strategy of having two pointers to solve a wide variety of different linked list questions. So let's continue in the next section where we're going to look at another linked list related question that can be solved with this same type of approach. So quick break, and I'll see you in a minute.